when you are asked to speak at a conference like this, I think all of you would think it over. What is this conference about, and what are you expected to do? And when I see in the conference that my subject is building rule of law and democracy, I concluded that my role at this conference for a Hungarian can only be Russian liberals do not feel lonely. There are others facing very similar problems than you do. But interestingly, 25 years ago, and I think that Kisher Faulkner, who at that time was Kisher Khan, can confirm what I'm saying, that it was a great thing to be a Hungarian. Hungary was a kind of a model country, serving as a model for rest of Central Eastern Europe. And I remember that already as soon as in 1990, NDI approached me to come and to share Hungarian experiences to Albania, and we went to Latvia and to Georgia, and you name the number of countries. They all told us, yes, but this is Hungary. Of course, in Hungary, everything is much better. The sun is shining day and not night, but it was perceived as a country that cannot even be followed. It is so much in the forefront of democratic transition. And now, 25 years later, this is, I would say, a shame to be Hungarian. Well, I work in Ukraine, and partly because of Hungarian foreign policy vis-à-vis Russia and vis-à-vis Ukraine, when people ask me, where are you from? I said, I'm from Europe. I prefer not to admit I'm from Hungary because I want to avoid this kind of bad feelings about this. And like in Germany, the Liberal Party is a big problem. In Hungary, it is dead. You can't even compare it. It happens in history that a party, a Liberal Party, another party, who used to be in government cannot qualify to parliament. It has a precedent in human history. But for a Liberal Party that used to be in the government coalition and then is unable to contest the election, I think it has a room in the Guinness World of Records. So there has been a real, very, very big change in Hungary. And I would like, of course, to give an analysis what happened here. All what I remember, for most of Hungarians, we always had wonderful excuses. It was the Tatars, it was the Ottomans, Habsburg and the Soviets never let Hungarians be free, and now we are there, nobody is around. So we do it for ourselves. And that's, by the way, a good thing, to wake up and to stop blaming others and to identify what is wrong with us. I used to live in Vilnius for a year, and I remember fine Lithuanian people told me, what is happening in your country? We were looking up on you during the Soviet times and even afterwards. And now we feel a kind of a sorrow, a regret. I mean, what is happening here? And since the Liberal Party died in Hungary, I can't stop thinking on what happened and what were our mistakes, what were the objective things and what were the subjective things. And while I think I disagree with the previous speaker that it's an objective thing, that there's a conservative trend, I certainly have to agree that there are ups and downs in liberal tendencies, and it's very certain that Hungary is facing a down period. But Hungary, that was called a goulash communism or a refrigerated communism, I wonder you heard this term, which meant that there was some consumption, certainly more than the rest of the communist countries. There was somewhat higher living standard, relatively more liberties, not too much, but relatively more. Some possibilities to travel, even to access to foreign literature. I would say Hungary was a better place to live. It was not a good place, it was very grey still, but certainly better. There were only 3 taboos, 1956, the role of the Communist Party and the role of the Soviet Union. Besides this, basically everything could have been discussed. And there were embryos of market economy. There was a relatively successful privatization era, already starting at 87. to 88, ending in the early 90s. And as I told you, after 1990, Hungary served as a model for the region. And today, what you see is difficult to imagine. It is easy to imagine in Russia. Constitutional court formally exists, but it has no more content. The state audit functions to exist. Ombudsmans are there for informality, but they say nothing. The media authorities are fully in the hand of the government. They are all full with Fidesz loyalists, including former MPs. And now, 2 weeks ago, even NGOs were raided in Budapest by police. This is something that must be familiar to Russians. And Imre Mich, who used to be a member of parliament for the Liberal Party, and he was indicted to death in 1956. That was never implemented, fortunately. Now, again, he is at court because of expressing his will. So this is really absolutely strange. And if you have a look what's happening in the media, I think this part of the world is fully familiar with this. The public media is fully part of the government propaganda. Every appointment belongs to the government. Fidesz established lots of private newspapers and TV channels and radio channels, of course full with Fidesz propaganda. And they managed to kill the so-called opposition media with not administrative tools. I would say it's extremely clever. The advertisement policy, the governmental agencies only go with advertisements with the Fidesz-supported media. And if private companies would go with the advertisement to private media, a week later somebody from the tax office would approach them and I think you don't want to find yourself in a trouble. And rest assured they will stop advertising in this private. So they kill them. They dry them out. I must say extremely sufficiently. They impose extra taxes on companies that are not fully meeting their requirements. Now they impose a big tax generally on all media companies, but it hits only one single company. One single TV channel, RTL, by the way, whom they want to buy, but they resisted. Now they punish them with these new taxes. Now, why some call it a post-communist mafia state? And the reason is because it is almost everything is all about getting rich, making money. I really hated communists. But when the communists confiscated the companies, they personally didn't get rich. János Kádár, some of them did, true, but certainly János Kádár, who was the Hungarian Brezhnev, he was a modest man with all of his political overdoings. I mean, I'm not defending him. But these people want to get everything into their family pocket. And again, the communists did everything with administrative measures and do it with quote-unquote market measures, with the extra taxes, and the company undergoes loss of profits, so owners will be enabled to buy them on a lower price, and they put extra taxes on the banks, and every big public suppliers. Now, the very interesting thing about this, on the one hand, it makes them extremely popular, and on the other hand, it can make them very, very rich. How they achieve this? If the government wants to impose some austerity measures because they were overspending, it says every normal party would, increase taxes and admit we have to do this for this or that. Not the Hungarian government. The Hungarian government imposes extra taxes only on the major international companies, including banks, who are anyway hated by the Hungarians because they represent foreign capitals. So what is happening? They get the money from these companies. These companies will, of course, transfer the cost to the people. So the average Hungarian citizen gets angry on these companies and not on the Hungarian government who was imposing the banks. They get the money, but the anger goes to somewhere else. And there's an extra benefit of those measures, that these companies will start to lose their values, and when their values are down, they can buy it on a very, very low price. It is purchased by the government, and after half a year or 1 year, they will reprivatize again to their own circles on a very, very, very low price. So this is a very tricky circus with usus, and I think we should also go a little bit to see the reasons. How Hungary, once leading transition country, got here. One of my conclusions would be that all values that liberals were standing for in the 90s, like market economy and respect of minority rights, they were very popular at that time, and today they sound like cursing in Hungary. It's partly objective and partly, of course, lots of mistakes. But we have to see it clearly that the transition, which was perceived as successful in Hungary and in the neighboring countries as well, it was extremely painful to a huge proportion of the popularity. So a populist country can very, very easily abuse those problems. When we say that we don't need a strong state, but we need strong civil society, we have to understand, and by the way, I still continue believing it, but we have to understand that while it is easy to dismount the strong state, it takes a hell of a time, that the civil society will be built up to provide a kind of a protection to the people which they feel. Now, we had our own problems as well. And maybe I don't want to answer the German liberal problem, but certainly, and we also made this mistake, that liberals should not stand for economical rational only. And I think both your party and our party has went into this trap because we should be much, much wider. We liberals, we love to talk brain to brain. We very rational. And I remember in Strasbourg we had a conference on the economical crisis, and my very good friend and the leader of Kisher, Lord Alderdice, John came to speak, and he said he read somewhere that a newspaper was surprised that people reacted rationally, didn't react rationally on this crisis. And he said, John said he was surprised because why this newspaper would have expected people act rationally when people are emotional people, emotional human beings. And we liberals very often make this mistake. We are extremely rational, and we should learn how to become more emotional. And again, this leadership versus economical versus following public sentiment that was raised by radical events, it's an evergreen dilemma for liberals. And very often we are so proud that we don't make compromise on our values, but then we are sitting in a hotel room or a hotel conference room while otherwise are running a country, governing the country. So to learn finding compromises, because there's certainly one rule in politics: if you want to govern a country, that you must have votes. And sometimes to find the proper compromises between maintaining your values and in order to be able to deliver to the liberal voters, what are the compromises? Very, very tricky questions, but maybe we should think more or less. I come to the, yes, one more minute. Another difference I would highlight between maybe Kaczynski, Mečiar, and Orban, and I must be honest, Orban is very clever. He's very cynical and very clever, I think more clever than the others are. And without going to psychological background, we know that his father was beating him, and I think since then he wants to take a revenge on the whole world, not only on Hungary, but on everybody else. It's just one story that when he was a prime minister, when the European Union imposed a sanction against Austria, I'm not arguing whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it was Viktor Orban who broke this sanction. And I was thinking why he did it. And I thought maybe Hungary at that time was negotiating EU membership, so maybe he wanted to have concessions in Chapter 9 or 7, so Austria said no. And many years later, I asked his foreign policy advisors, what was the prize he received in inviting Schüssel, Chancellor of Austria-Hungary? And the answer was very disconcerting. He said, do you know, Matyas, that's my nickname, how does it feel to Hungarian Prime Minister that the Austrian Chancellor is leaking into his office room under the carpet? And I said, yes, but what else? I said, nothing else. And I really said, it's a psychological problem here. And then also this patriotism problem that Kisher was asking, I very much agree with her. Also, when Orban who doesn't hate the neighbors, he just doesn't respect the neighbors while he respect from the neighbors, he makes this patriotism a division line within his own country. When in his speech, when he lost the election, by the way, he said, the nation cannot go to opposition, identifying his party with the nation and then excluding others from the nation. So maybe I would say that Orban is very clever. He is aware that the European Union is based on treaties, and when Hungary is criticized for, let's say, partisan media board, then he says, what, United Kingdom? The chairman of the BBC is appointed by the government, and then European Union is in a deadlock. What to say? The difference is, of course, they're still democratic, while Hungarian is not. So let me just finish with saying that one of my big disappointment is I was in a different high positions when Hungary was negotiating EU membership. I was always told that European Union is based on values. It's not only distribution of money among countries, but it's based on values. After a couple of years, I have to say, all a lie. The socialists are standing for Victor Ponta, EPP is standing up for Viktor Orban, and just I don't hear anybody heavyweight EU leader that speak up on those issues, and even Cameron, I mean, is a ally of Orban because they have on certain issues different ideas about the European Union. Is there a hope? And that's my final statement. Democracy is a process. It's not a paradise where we arrive. I think the problem in Hungary is not Orban. At the moment is the people of Hungary, if I may. It doesn't sound good, I know. But Hungarians should learn that this policy leads to nowhere. And while we have no dictatorship, just an autocratic government, I don't see viable opposition at the moment. But I say to myself that this Leonid Brezhnev appeared to be eternal. And the system is dead. Then I'm sure we shouldn't wait for too long. That Orban system will also be dead soon. Thank you.